Hello there everyone, welcome back to another video about the One Piece card game. I've got another deck profile for you today for OP07, and I'm not going to lie, this might be my favourite deck I have played in the format, which is a weird thing to say. But honestly, I find the gameplay very, very fun, weirdly. That's probably a controversial statement. And I also think that this is a deck, like, if I were to pick one leader that is guaranteed to have longevity, like the number one leader that at some point in the future will be very good, or like will be playable, or will always be some level of playable, it would be this one, and that's Nami. So this is the only alternative win con deck in the game, where you need to deck yourself out to win. And honestly, it got a massive power boost with OP07. So we got so for those of you who have not been following the journey with this deck, it was actually very, very good in OP03. But it was hit on the ban list. Losing Kabaji hurt a fair bit, but it was still playable. OP04 and 5 came and went. OP05 was once blue decks started becoming very, very meta from OP05. This deck began to suffer a bit. OP04 to some degree as well, but mainly OP05, and that was because blue bot decks your stuff, and that makes the whole game plan of this deck a little bit harder to deal with. OP07, OP06 gave us one new inclusion in the deck, but by and large, the deck was pretty much the same Impel Down East Blue package until OP07. Now, there are a few different ways you can build this deck, but in my opinion, the best variant for the current format is the Kuja Pirates variant, and that is what you gain access to in OP07. How competitive is this deck? I think very. Now, you do have bad matchups, absolutely. Some decks, just generally speaking, by the way they develop their board, are going to have a more favorable game plan into you. You know, for example, RP Law is going to have a favorable matchup into you because it bot decks your stuff. So that is, it's rough. They don't bot deck that much. It's like once a turn. So if you really turbo through your deck, you can still, you know, you can draw the extra 2 to 4 cards that may end up there. But you do need to be a little bit more lucky than usual against RP Law for sure. And then Bonnie. And Bonnie is rough because if they slap down a 9 Zoro against you, you can be cooked because you can stop a lot of attacks, but you can't stop a 9 Zoro coming at your face 3 times with 7 Don. So that being said, I definitely think there is a place in the meta. And looking at OP08, you know, there's a ban list coming up. If RP Law gets the ban hammer, I think there is a real shot that Nami is playable. Before we get any further with actually getting into the deck, I also just want to say that this deck is super, super skill intensive. My experience with this deck, and I think having spoken to some Japanese players and read some of the thoughts of the really, really good Japanese Namis, was the guy who won the first championship series with Nami, and basically put the deck on the map. This deck requires pretty much perfect play and a little bit of good luck. And the good luck comes in the form of not seeing multiple terrible matchups and seeing a little bit of decent luck in your triggers. It doesn't actually need to be that much, in my experience. In particular, now in OP07, you honestly, like, one decent trigger in your life, like one draw 2 trigger in your life, and you play a lot of them, is probably enough to get you over the line. You know, and that's actually not crazy. You don't even need to see the trigger if you see very good. If you'd like hard draw all 4 of your Pilafs in the early game, like, that is also fine. So yeah, like there's a lot that goes into playing this deck well, but honestly, I think it can be done. And I think you could top with this deck. I don't know, you could win a tournament right now with this deck, but you could definitely top one. So I've split the deck up into a few packages, and we'll start off with the East Blue package because this is the core of the deck, as well as actually, I'll grab the East Blue package, and then I'll also grab the sort of the additional, like, the additional good stuff, and this sort of forms the core of Nami. So let's start with the East Blue package. So first we got 4 copies of Apis. So this card is kind of awful, but you have to play it. You have to discard 2 cards to look at the top 5 for an East Blue. Obviously, that is awful. It can search itself, so there are a large number of targets, so you don't usually whiff this card, but it can happen. And again, if you've just discarded 2 cards and played a card down from your hand to whiff, that's rough. But this is how you search your Pilaf, super important. The other unit you play that's East Blue is 4 copies of Kaya. The alt arts are coming, don't worry. I've enjoyed this deck so much that I decided I'm going to alt it out, and looking at the alts that are coming, you know, Pilaf's getting an alt. What's it called? Giant Gavel is getting an alt. So I decided to alt this deck because I think it's pretty evergreen. So this card's, again, also like Heart and Soul, draw 2, trash 2. It is a neg in card advantage, but it's 2k counter. You rarely want to counter with it. You usually just are spamming them to just turbo through your deck as much as possible. So those are units that are East Blue. Then we've got, obviously, Sanji's Pilaf. This card says draw 2 on trigger and draw 2 on play. Staple. 4 copies of Gum Gum Giant Gavel. So Gavel is discard a card. Up to one of your leaders gains 4k power during this battle, and then you trash 2 from the top of your deck. So, I mean, it's actually now it will never come up. Before you used to play Zeph in this deck, now you don't. That sometimes you, if people weren't reading, then you can't actually counter for Zeph on this. But yeah, so basically this is milling 2. And the trigger on this will bounce a 4 cost or lower. Sometimes you do want to use these triggers to disrupt your opponent's board if you think you're going to be taking too much aggression. But honestly, if you're in a position where you are taking more aggression than you left Don up to manage, that's kind of a player issue. And the more I've played this deck, the more I've realized that like it's actually about very, very careful resource management and understanding what your opponent's next turn is likely going to look like. And basically leaving up exactly enough to handle whatever that looks like. You don't want to. You need to be maximizing every single turn and every single Dom to really see the maximum returns with this deck. And then the last card is the easiest to use card in the deck, and that's Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom. This is a 2k counter that mills 1. The trigger, you draw 1 and trash 1. So as trigger, you always want to use this because this trigger is, again, is like a draw 2. You know, it's functionally a draw 2 because you are losing. You're like 2 cards are being removed from your deck. So this is another really great one of those cards, trigger. And this is what I mean when I say like actually you've got a lot of very, very good triggers in the deck that will like get you there. This is one of them. So we've got this here. Let's see if I can lay it all out here. So then we've also got like the sort of the good card package, and this is again staple in Nami. It's not going anywhere. So we got 4 Desert Spada. This trigger is a draw 2 trash 1. So again, it's filtering through. It also lets you stack the top 3 cards of your deck. Occasionally you will use this card. By and large, it's here for the trigger, and it's not searchable. It can be searchable if you choose to play Sengoku as a searcher, which we'll come on to, because I think there is an argument for that. But yeah, generally speaking, this is just going to get discarded, and it's here for the trigger. A card that is also here for the trigger and will always get discarded is Impel Down All-Stars. This is literally just here because it says draw 2 as a trigger, and it just straight gets discarded. I love... I mean, if we could use the main effect of this card, I think this deck would probably be broken. I think it probably, like, if we get a card on this level, like, I think that'll push Nami over the edge of, like, being way too good. And then finally, this is an OP06 edition in White Snake. So this gives your leader a K for the turn, and then you draw 1. And then, as the trigger, you look at 5 cards on top of your deck and place them on the top or bottom of your deck in any order. I think this card's a bit awkward. Honestly, it just digs you, and sometimes it does make the maths quite nice if your opponent's like looking to do a lot of 9k swings while you play a White Snake, and now suddenly your 4k is getting you to that 10k. So depending on the board state of your opponent, this can be really, really good. Basically, the more things your opponent has, the later in the game it is, the better this card becomes. Within reason, of course, like, you know, fundamentally you do still need to have Don to do stuff. So you could play 3 of these, but then at best you've got 4 Don open. So you need to be careful. So this is the core of the deck. These cards do not leave the deck. So this is 32 cards. This does not change, I think, right? 20, 32, yeah. So this doesn't change. Maybe White Snake can get crept. I can see White Snake leaving the deck, but these, very unlikely. We would need to hit a pretty significant level of creep for the deck for these cards to leave because their trigger is so good. So we've got those. Now let's talk about the Kuja Pirates package, because that is, I think, what really pushed this deck over the line into being like really, really consistent. I mean, it was already good, but having access to the So the Kuja Pirate stuff, I think, has been really, really nice. So, the final parts of this deck, and I'll lay it out all out at the end again. It's the Kuja Pirates package. So we have 3 copies of Grandma Nyon. Now, you can play Sengoku, and the consistency of the deck is similar. If you play Sengoku, you cut this next card, which is Marguerite. Now, I don't know that that's actually a good thing to do. And the reason you do that is, so Sengoku searches 7 Warlords of the Sea. And what that means is, you gain searchability for Desert Spada, but you lose searchability for Margaret. So you just cut Margaret. I think those are the only Amazon Lily exclusively traded cards. So the Kuja, everything. And also you have to change out another card we'll come on to. But it's functionally identical. It just means you're basically swapping this out for, I would swap it out for Mr. 1, which is the 1 cost that adds back events from your trash. Honestly, I prefer the Kuja Pirates build the more I've played, but I think that version is slightly easier to play. So I would say if you're learning Nami, maybe start with that, and then you can start playing Kuja Pirates, because it requires, I think, generally just like more experience with Nami to know how many resources to leave open, to know when you can actually use Margaret and things like that. Margaret, so yeah, this is the top 5 searcher for Kuja Pirates and Amazon Lily. So Margaret's crazy. Margaret is a blocker that says draw card. Now, obviously, she's a 3/2, so everything on her mum removes this card. RP Law is going to be delighted to see this card because you just spent 3 Don to do nothing. They're just going to bot deck it, and your deck is basically exactly the same, and you spent 3 Don for no reason that you could have been spending defending yourself and milling in that way. That being said, depending on the matchup, you're totally fine. If they're going to spend resources trying to hard remove this, that is fine. That's resources that could be dedicated to building a wider board, to loading up Don onto their characters and just swinging at your face, right? Like, if that's the decision they're making, that's the decision they're making. And if they do just let it sit there and they start swinging big, well, great. That's a 1 card stopping like an 11k swing, for example. Fantastic. So, yeah, this card's very, very good. This deck has always really missed a good blocker, so it's nice to have one. I wish it was 2 Don, but it is what it is. So that is the next card. And then we come on to the events. So obviously 4 copies of Love Love Mellow. This card is amazing. And this is one of the major pushes that this deck gets in OP07. It is searchable Love Love Mellow. So Elden Yon and Sengoku can both search this card. So whichever build you go for, this card is now searchable. And that is amazing because that added consistency. Firstly, you're getting a card out of your deck, right? So this is a 1 card, draw 1, right? But it's, it's card neutral, whereas Kai is card negative. But it digs less hard. And obviously there's an element of you can whip it. And then when you're chaining Love Love Mellows, this deck feels absolutely amazing. You just sit there and your hand's not going down at all. You're not taking any damage, and it feels absolutely incredible. So yeah, this card is absolutely key. Next, we got Snake Dance. Now, this is slightly better than Overheat, is basically what it is. So it's counter to give 4k and then return one of your characters to its owner's hand. Now, you were basically always using Overheat to bounce back Kaya anyway. However, there was some utility to being able to bounce back your opponent's 3 costs if they hadn't attacked with them yet. So you do lose out on that. The benefit here is the trigger here is much better because you will bounce one of your characters and one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So 5 or less hits a lot more things, and you're getting back your Kaya for free by triggering this. So on balance, this is slightly better. And this card is searchable with Nyon, but it is not searchable with Sengoku. And finally, we have 3 copies of Perfume Fema. You might be wondering, why the hell are we playing this card? It's because the trigger says draw 1, and because you can search it. That is literally the only reason. It is discard fodder, but if you trigger it, it digs you through your deck, and you can search it, so it's another chance for Elden Yon to basically not whiff. And that is the deck. So I think really the big innovation is the sort of Kuja Pirates package that has come in and is I think really, really, really powerful. And honestly, if you think Nami's not good, you are very much sleeping on a really solid deck. I think I'm hopeful in OP09 this deck will get another 1 or 2 decent pieces of support, because that will really, really push it. I think OP07 is a playable meta for this deck. OP08 is absolutely not, unless RP Law gets hit. Because like that's a bad matchup that's winnable in 08, but is absolutely not at all winnable in 09. Like it's so bad. Sorry, in 07, but it's not at all winnable in 08. It's so bad. So yeah, that being said, I really enjoyed this deck. I'd recommend you guys give it a go. It's really hard to play is what I'll say. Like expect your first like several hours of playing this deck to just be you sitting there going, 2 short again, 1 short again, 3 short again. But as you get more and more experience with the deck, you will learn those little optimizations that will get you the 1, 2, and those final few cards that will just start seeing your win rate like skyrocket. My win rate with this deck right now is something like 70%, but obviously that's, you know, not competitive gameplay. That's like playing on sim and things like that. So take that with a pinch of salt. But the fact it's winning at all is saying something, right? Yeah, that's it. I'm thinking of doing an in-depth guide to this deck. So let me know if you think if that's something you'd be interested in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more One Piece card game content. Check out my Patreon for in-depth guides, as well as early access to all of my videos. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Cheers.